Welcome to the ABCs of Horses, a Big Blend radio podcast featuring Christy Wood, a world champion horse trainer, a carded horse show judge, an equestrian expert, and an author. Welcome, everybody. Today is the D-Day. No, we're not going to World War II, but horses did play a big role in World War II, and Christy will talk about that on another episode of another show too on our Big Blend Radio Network. But D is for diet. I know a lot of us want to run away from the word diet. No. But diet and horses, that's a big deal. If we do the wrong thing, that can result into colic, which is what we talked about in the previous episode. Link in the show notes. Just saying, because colic is a big deal. But diet in your horses is really huge. And each horse, I believe, may have a different thing that they need to eat. I know from boarding our own horses, one horse was actually allergic to hay. And we went through hell and trying to feed this horse. And I don't want to talk about the outcome of that. But Christy, welcome back. How are you?
I am fine, Lisa. It's great to be here again.
So what I just said about each horse's individual, we found that out when we were in South Africa with having horses in our state. We had, 3 to 4 to 5 horses, and one was allergic to their hay. They were even allergic to dirt. And we did actually have to say goodbye to that horse. And Nancy had to be the person to save the horse, parent, the trauma of saying goodbye to the horse. And she didn't. Anyway, I don't want to talk about it. But that horse was allergic to hay. Go figure. I have never known any other horse other than that one. But it was a thoroughbred horse that was a retired horse from racing and just had so many issues. So I don't know what happened to that horse, but it had issues, So diet, I think, do we have to look at it individually per horse versus all horses eat this? Because we as humans have to look at things individually. And I think about that with dogs. All animals Nancy and I care for as we travel the country and pets it. Every animal seems to have a different dietary need.
Well, that's true. Let's go back a couple of billion years to start this conversation. Because if you think about what horses did, is they roamed thousands and thousands and thousands of acres, and they had the ability to know what they needed in their diets. And that, thank goodness, they had thousands of acres, because they would roam one place to find maybe more minerals that they might need. There's just almost different vitamins in the greenery that they would eat, and they would travel miles and miles and find another bush or something that gave them certain, even amino acids and just different things that you can find through the diet. But that's changed when we have domesticated the horse. So we no longer take away his ability to find what he needs, and it's obvious that he knew what he needed. And now the human has stepped in, domesticated him, and thank goodness, because we definitely enjoy our horses. And they also, of course, help settle the West on both sides of that barrier. But we've domesticated them and now have taken away their natural ability to roam and find what they need. So every horse could have a different diet. We just can't say every horse is going to do great on 10 acres, 100 acres of wild grassland. What happens when that wild grassland dries up? Then some of the minerals are gone. It doesn't come back again until we have rains. So now they're in a paddock or a corral, however you want to call it, even a smaller pasture, to where we have to feed them twice a day because they can't forage to get enough of the food and the good food that their bodies tell them they need to seek and search out. So you have to just watch and observe your horse. Hopefully, everybody that's getting into horses, and we've designed this podcast to help the beginners primarily that are getting started with horses, and the horse that you purchase from the person you just bought this horse from is going to tell you this is the best diet for your horse. They have found out either from a previous owner or by trial and error. And I've actually had to go through a few things with trial and error to find out what the best diet is for a particular horse.
Okay, so I'm going to go to a point of where Nancy and I once bought a house, and the person said, okay, you need to cut these things down that are weeds. And they turned out to be native flowers and beautiful beings.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the person you bought the horse from could be wrong. So is that,
Well,
I mean,
well, yes,
I'm just saying,
but okay, but
like,
let's make it real simple. Are you buying a horse that's skinny, the ribs are showing, the
ah,
hair coat is dull, or are you buying a horse that's sleek,
ah.
well muscled, well fed, and is healthy, is happy? Come on, diet's going to tell us all about how we feel and how we look.
Okay, but I know you help that, right? So I'm going to go to that. Let's just dig into that for a second because I know you help people purchase horses that
Mhm.
make sense to what they want to do with the horse. So you have that communication of like looking at the horse, maybe the person selling this horse, you can look at around the country and around the world even, right? You can
Right.
look at a horse,
Mhm.
how it looks and say, no, horse is not as healthy as you think. So that, because I think a horse is not only, there's rescue horses, and that's a whole other thing. That's a
Mhm.
different topic than what I'm talking about now. But if you're purchasing a horse for a certain reason, for riding on trails, or maybe show jumping, and etc., you're going to pay a price for that. And then there comes the whole other money parts of it, right? So it's an investment. So buying a horse shouldn't be flippant.
No, of course not. And if you're a beginner starting out with this, I strongly suggest that you find a professional to help you because you're not going to see some of the things that a professional could see. And I mean a professional, either a trainer, a professional rider. I'm actually three of those things, and the third one is a horse show judge. So I
Mm.
judge horses for a living. So trust me, my eyes are looking up and down leg structure, hooves, how things line up. It's very important that you have a horse that can function in the discipline you decide to use that horse
So
for.
when someone purchases a horse, they should know about their diet, like you said at the beginning here. And then I took a detour because I think it's an important detour that, hey, you may think this horse is pretty and cute, or I want to adopt it. I want, the emotional side, right?
Okay,
So,
let me explain this.
okay, go, go, go,
Let's take
go,
one
girl.
let's take one area of the horse that you're looking at. You're gonna buy a horse and take care of it. Let's look at its hooves. The hooves are the most important. If you don't have a good base of support on with the horse's hoof, then it's not going to function properly. And I keep going back to my statement of form to function. So when I show up to look at a horse that somebody wants to buy or my client wants to buy, I'm going to look at those hooves. I'm going to look at the shape. I'm going to look at the structure. Does it have a good heel? Does it have a good length, correct length of toe? Is the angle correct on the hoof? Um, and I'll pick up that hoof and I'll look at the shoe job. Gee, has this horse been shod by a professional, or has it been shod by someone that just happened to be up the road and he has a couple of nails and an anvil? I mean, seriously, there's good farriers and there's farriers that have not been educated. So there's some things that you can fix, and this is what I'm getting to, is some things we can fix, like a shoe job on a horse by a professional farrier, if we have something to work with. If we don't have something to work with, we have to try to understand, is it a genetic issue or is it a controllable issue or a man-made issue to where we can change feed, possibly give supplements to help enhance that hoof to be a better hoof than it is now. Or if it's genetics, you're really going to be you can help it a little bit, but you're never going to help it fully. So that's why we go back to feed again, is what are we feeding these horses to help them? We can actually enhance hooves and a good hair coat and healthy bone structure by adding some supplements, but you also have to know how to add the supplements and what to add. You can supplement a horse. And everybody
Mm.
knows, or anybody that takes vitamins knows, there's water soluble vitamins, and then there's others that linger in your body for a very long time. And you can actually create toxicity in your own body if you don't know which ones are which
Mm.
and how
Good
to use
point.
them. So goes back to diet.
Okay, so diet. So you maybe get a new horse, and let's talk about someone who's just bought a horse and maybe just goes, okay, immediately I need to get hay. How much hay do I give the horse? Do I give him like how much feed versus hay? Like, there at some points I remember giving molasses to horses. I don't
Wow.
know about that. Is that a no-no? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a big no-no as far as
Oh, holy cow.
straight molasses. Well, what would it do to
This
your
was in the
teeth?
80s. This was in the 80s.
Yeah, in the 80s it was different. In the 80s, they actually
And
added a
we were
lot
in
of,
Africa. So
yeah,
just saying.
they added a lot of molasses to grains to help
Was
make
that
the grain.
really a true thing that happened?
Yes, yeah,
Not just in South Africa.
no,
That was here.
it helped the
Whoa.
grains stick together. It made it more palatable for the horse to want to eat something. But again, it depends on the volume of molasses. But honestly, that's like eating packets of sugar every day. What's it going to do to your body? What's it going to do to you? Your metabolism, your weight,
Oh.
your teeth. Oh my goodness. So it's
Oh, wow.
wonderful as things progress, and we all know this in our world. We find more cures to cancer, hopefully, and we find things that
Better
are
diets for humans.
better
Well,
diets for humans. There's better
I
diets now for
I,
horses.
I want to say this right now that it's so important we're having this conversation because there's families on ranches and generational things,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And we can have this thing of this is how we've always done it. And it's important to understand that things move on and change with science and, diet as we talk about, right, today.
Right.
So we need to learn the new stuff because just because it was how we've always done it doesn't mean it's how we should always do it, right? So
Right.
generational in horses, especially, I think it's, I think it's a very, this is a big thing to talk about because it's a generational thing that
But Lisa,
families can have a feud over this kind of thing.
Lisa, it's also an attitude.
Ah,
And I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody.
me neither.
And I
Me
think,
neither. That's why I'm like flubbering over my words. I'm like, no, I don't want to say this, but I need to. you know?
there's an attitude sometimes that people think they know enough about horses for whatever reason. They watched enough Westerns. They had a friend that had a horse. People have an attitude depending on possibly where they live. I'm just generalizing. And again, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but sometimes the people that are further away from the cities who have 100,000 acres to turn their horse out on. Actually, those horses actually will do better on those 1,100 acres, but they don't always look at the other things of horse care and the diet. And sometimes these
Mm,
horses lack the opportunity to be the best they are because people kind of, it's not called streamline. The word I'm looking for is they don't put enough thought or care into what their horses do. They're going to use them for a little bit, maybe gathering some cattle or doing whatever they do a couple of months out of the year, and then the horses have to fend for themselves out on those
oh,
thousands
yeah.
of acres, or they're not in a barn, or they may have a hoof issue and they don't really realize it, or the horse is lame and they figure, you know what, we'll just turn the horse out for a year or two. If he
Or
gets
you
better,
don't have to
fine.
have the actual hoof
So
um,
there's just different
thing.
attitudes, and there's a lot of people that don't understand how the ultimate care you can give your horse to benefit and really get 100% out of the animal that you have because you paid attention to some special needs that it might have in its diet.
You talked about hoofs, and I know we're going to get there on the H,
Yeah,
hoof care.
hoof
And
care
I know
and
I want to say there's the whole thing about having no horseshoes versus natural hooves,
yeah,
depending.
we'll talk to that. We'll talk about
That's
that
going to
next.
come. I'm just giving everybody a little teaser on that. But this is an important thing in you have expectations of what you're doing with a horse because this is a living being.
So I got a
So,
little, I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm going to jump in right now and tell you a little story about somebody I met that
mm-hmm.
decided to buy, I'm not going to even mention the breed of horse, but it was a horse that had been sort of out in the wild for a while. And they brought it home and they really didn't think about what it was they were going to feed it. Now they've kept it in a smaller, much smaller pen. I mean, it hadn't been, it probably was 20 by 20.
Oh,
They were questioning what to feed and how much to feed, and they really weren't really this. They wondered why the horse was losing weight, and they weren't feeding this horse. And I said, this is how much you need to feed a domestic horse that is now in a paddock that you're controlling, and this horse is relying on you and looking to you for its nourishment that it
sustenance,
needs
yeah.
every day. And the lady's comment to me was, well, this horse survived out in the wild, out in the open all these years. I figure he doesn't need to eat much. The statement didn't make sense to me. You've changed now where that horse can get all that feed, and now you've
You're penning it in.
basically penned it in, and you're starving this horse. This horse needs to eat even more than what you thought. Yes, he can survive, but it's got thousands of acres to survive if he's
Yeah.
on
Well,
the wild.
this brings in a conversation of people bringing in wild horses through the BLM land, right? They have
Mhm.
this thing of bringing wild horses in that people can adopt them.
Mhm.
And that, I don't want to get into that whole conversation either. That's a W thing, right? That's
Mhm.
way, way down the road.
Mhm.
And, the reality is wild horses are wild. They're out in the nature land and historically are actually historically, truly older placements in the ecosystem than cattle because cattle actually come from Africa and Asia. So, whatever. We can all fight about it and whatever. But these horses are federally protected. So then there's this whole big management thing and everybody's fighting about them. But people adopt these wild horses and they're like, I got a wild horses. I got a Mustang.
Mhm.
And now, how are you going to feed these horses compared
Mhm.
to what they were? They've already gone through a traumatic experience having to be taken out of wild lands, split up from their families, and brought home. How are you going to feed them what when they're used to wild
Well,
lands?
well, what?
That's such a good thing what you were talking about with this
Right.
lady.
So,
You
so
can't just go, here's your scoop. It's different.
well, why don't you stop for a minute and turn around and look out into the wilderness of where that horse came from? And now you describe to me what's on that hill, what's out there in that valley. It's wild grass. It's wild grass. It's not wild alfalfa. So it's going to be less in protein. You've got to be careful about introducing protein. And anytime,
Oh,
as you well know, with any animal, because you do a lot of sitting for other animals, you never just cold turkey change feed on a dog or a cat, even a horse. You've got to gradually switch them over so their body can acclimate to the
thank
different
you.
nutrients, the vitamins, the protein. And so it's something that has to be done on a gradual basis, but you would probably start day one with that horse with some natural grass hay. You wouldn't feed it beautiful, rich green alfalfa. It's probably going to have diarrhea and its body cannot handle the richness. It just makes,
Oh,
to me,
this
it's common
that
sense. But
yeah. Are we back to? Even the title of the last show I put in there was "Common Sense"
common
because
sense.
it's true. But okay, we're gonna like, yeah. I would say diarrhea sense, but no. But honestly, I think that a lot of people go to adopt these horses and don't understand what they're getting into 100%. And
Well, that's,
I want people to adopt these horses.
yeah.
I don't want them to be killed or
Mhm.
culled or whatever
Mhm.
and I mean, I can tell you all the stories and I don't want to go there where, oh, they go to Canada, Mexico, they're in rodeos and Canada, they're being killed for horse meat and whatever. Um, I just did because I had to. But, and it's true. But if we're going to be stewards of these wild beings, you have to have time and patience to do it. And
Yes, of
diet
course.
is one of the first things, I
Right.
think.
Right. So
It has to
hopefully,
be.
right. So hopefully the horse that you just bought from somebody has it down pretty well, what was has been successful feeding that horse. And
Mm.
you'll see, and you'll when you walk up to see that horse, you're going to see it in the horse. You've got a beautiful shiny coat, nice round hooves. There's just so much that you can
Oh,
observe.
this
What?
is so perfect what you just said because it's doesn't matter where you got your horse from. Look at what they told you, look at what the horse looks like,
Hmm?
but maybe,
Observation.
yeah, look at it all.
Well, you have to look at all of
So,
it. Yeah.
what would be the first thing that you do when you come home with a horse? I mean, that's kind of
Okay.
that's a freaky feeling, actually.
Well,
I got
yeah.
a horse, and now, holy crap! Like,
Okay.
serious. I'm sorry, I did the Ray Romano dude, old
It's okay.
man thing.
So
Holy
what
crap!
happens? So what happens if you buy a pet from a pet store or from a breeder? They a good, honest, decent person of a breeder or even the pet store will send you home with what the animal is being fed, so that you can make that transition to maybe what you're going to have, or you find the same feed. You know, there's plenty of PetSmarts around, and you can go find the same feed if for your cat and your dog, but you know, the person that's even selling the horse will show you what they've been getting. They should send home a bale of hay with the horse. Personally, that's the way I would do it. So you can transition if you can't find, if you're from a different area, your haze may be a little different. Gosh, there's so many things to look out for. If you're out in Oklahoma and Texas, there's a blister beetle that they don't realize that can be baled into that hay. If your horse ingests that,
Oh,
he's gonna die, seriously. So when we go to nationals and world shows out in Texas and Oklahoma, trust me, we've got one rig that's carrying just the hay that we may need for 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
and
We
you're not
never,
trusting anything else,
well,
anybody else's stuff. Yeah.
we never buy local hay.
Oh,
So
and also your horse is not used to that. Yeah.
exactly,
You want to
exactly.
keep them used to their
Right,
diet,
right.
right?
Right. But
Yeah.
anyway, so you should ask the person you're buying the horse from, how much, where did you buy it? What type of hay is this? And you try to follow the same program. Now, unfortunately, if you buy it from somebody who hasn't really cared for this horse, has just kind of bounced off the walls and being not too involved with horse ownership and just says, oh, we just buy anything we can at the local feed store here and there. I mean, that's a tough one, but the best thing to do is to try to, again, observe what that horse has been fed, take a look at it, even ask for maybe one or two flakes, just to be able to compare even the color and the stems and the flowers that are in it. There's so much to know
No,
about
no,
hay,
when you open up a hay thing, okay.
hay
I
bale.
just want to talk about opening when you talk about flake of hay.
Hmm.
There is dead hay, there's moldy hay. I want to talk about the mold because if you need to keep your hay in a place that doesn't just like do you know what hay balers go through to even get hay? Like,
Hmm.
can I just talk about that?
Sure.
They work their butts off to hay, bring that in at the specific time that the hay is ripe and ready
Hmm.
before a storm comes. And
Hmm.
hay balers go through hell to make it work that
Hmm.
you get it.
That's
So if
right.
you, as any individual that purchases hay and lets it go to waste in a storm and gets wet and moldy, I'm just saying, I'm calling you out. It's, am I allowed to? Am I allowed to?
Yeah, you're
I'm
allowed to do
sorry.
that. So
I'm sorry. I'm calling you out. But
let's take a look at
hey,
that horse. But look
yeah.
at your horse. Your horse is big and strong. And guess what? That 1,200-pound horse has a very, very delicate digestive system. So he's not built out. He doesn't have the same inside as he does outside. I guess that's the best way for me to tell you that. You've got to protect what this horse eats. He doesn't have a second stomach like a cow. He can't chew out the toxins. That's what cows and goats and sheep do, is they chew out the toxins. Horses
Mm.
cannot do that. So any moldy hay, any discolored hay, that it can even be yellow inside, that funny
Oh,
looking yellow, not the outside, because the sun can bleach alfalfa hay and make it look a little uh, brown colored
oh,
or lightly dusty colored or skin colored. I'm just trying to use some words here to describe. That's okay because of sun bleaching. It's what's inside when you open that. So anything and a smell, oh my gosh, the smell will tell you it's not fresh, it's not right. Do not feed it. Go put it on your garden or put it in the trash. Do
Okay,
not feed
so
it.
when I talked about last month's episode, I think, talking about stuff and opening up hail, like I would say hail because I went through a hailstorm and
Bales of hay.
lightning, lightning. I went through storms, but I opened up hay and was like, no, I'm not doing it,
Good.
because I could tell it was moldy and went, no, moving. And I'm not taking a chance because a
That's
mold
right.
thing,
Hmm.
mold is the death of all of us, humans and animals.
Hmm.
I believe you eat mold. I mean, there's mushrooms. Mushrooms are different, right? But you don't eat anything moldy with the actual mold thing on top. Like you could have cheese. Cheese is a mold, but there's mold on the cheese. You don't want to eat the mold on the cheese, right?
Okay. Well,
Right.
but right.
Did I get this really clear?
Yes.
No mold,
Right.
right?
But there,
Now,
if there's any reasonable doubt, let's say you're not that experienced yet, any
but
reasonable
that,
doubt, do not feed it to your horse.
but it
It's that simple.
smells good. The horse hay that is healthy and happy has that, like, it's the smell of spring.
It's a pleasant smell.
It
Yes.
is. It's the
Yeah.
smell of spring.
Yes.
And if you don't have it, you got to start to wonder. You know what I mean?
Right.
I told you about that. Like I was wondering through this, like, oh, this part's fine and this part's not. And I'm going, none of it is good in this trailer of hay. And did almost get zapped by lightning, but I just really can tell you, don't do it.
So
Animals will
even
start coughing
well,
immediately if
right.
you did
And
it.
let me tell you this, they will, well, there's worse things that can happen than a cough if you feed that moldy hay. Most horses have a good sense of scent of what they can eat. I've seen a lot of horses that have pushed the moldy hay that sticks together off to the side. Thank goodness horses have done that.
Yeah.
But if it's mixed in with the really, really, really good hay and there's just one bad part that's bad, some horses may ingest that. You've got to be careful. When you said cough, if you open up a bale of hay and a big, large, billowy dust cloud rises from that hay,
Everyone's going to cough.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, now the dust isn't mold, but you're going to create a problem for that horse. And just that much dirt and dust, it might have been a bale that was on the corner of the field. It might have had a lot more dirt caught up
Mm.
into the combine when they cut it. That much dust can create a problem even in your horse. Your horse is going to get it into their lungs, they're going to get it into their throat, and they'll cough. So,
Dang, I didn't know we were going to get this deep. Man, Christy, we're getting deep in the hay. But
yeah.
now what about so there's hay. We all know hay, right?
Well, hay's
What
a
about
general.
actual feed? What
Well,
about
hay.
actual feed?
We use the word hay as a general term for obviously baled, dry. We'll call it grass or alfalfa to feed our horses. But then there's different types of. We'll call it hay or grass. There's grass hays. There's alfalfa. Alfalfa is very good for horses because of the protein and the vitamin count. But there's some horses, again, that cannot tolerate that much protein and that much richness, and they're going to have a problem with it. So some horses you need to back off the protein count, and that's something that actually my hay dealer does for me, which is wonderful, is he actually tests my hay every year for me. Because believe it or not, I've got a horse that's sugar intolerant. So I cannot feed alfalfa hay that is more than 10% sugar, or it's going to tip her over the
Wow.
scale and create an issue with her. But if some horses need, less protein, you can feed grass hays. There's so many different grass hays that are baled. There's Timothy and Bermuda, orchard grass. There's just a lot of different
Wow.
types of grass hay, and from different areas. There's a different type of grass hay that's up in Idaho and Montana compared to what they grow down there in Indio and Southern California. So there's just depends on what your horse needs. There's a lot of different reasons.
So does your vet help you in this? as a horse owner of what your horse should have?
Well, that's if you don't have a professional person to go and help you with this, your veterinarian, establish a relationship with a veterinarian. Yes, your veterinarian will be more than happy to tell you what the general standard is for feeding a horse. And you can start out with that kind of a program, but then again, you have to be observant to make sure his manure is normal, to make sure he's eating everything. Gee, is he just pushing certain things to the side? There's a lot of horses that get very choosy and picky about their alfalfa. If the stems are too thick, they push them to the side and just eat the flowers. Well, guess what? He's not getting enough roughage. That'll definitely change what his manure is going to look like. So it's interesting how you have to play that game a little bit with your horse and try to entice them to eat more of the stem or an equal amount of the stem as they do the flower, so we don't have a digestive issue. Throwing maybe some grass hay or Timothy hay in there might be good. Again, your veterinarian is a great resource. A professional trainer or somebody that's been into horses for quite a long time, has fed a lot of different horses. Go ask them, go look at the different types of hay that they have. But again, hopefully the person you bought the horse from is going to be knowledgeable. If they're not, yes, consult your veterinarian.
Is most of the time like hay that gets fed, or do they get supplements on top of that?
Well, again, that goes back to observation. How does your horse look? Is that horse sleek and it's shiny and it's nice and round? We're not going to say fat, but when I say fat or round, we don't want to see the ribs. We have a horse that's got good muscle tone. It's utilizing its food properly. And if you may not have, and good hooves, you may not have to feed some supplements. I've had horses over the years that have had some hoof issues. It's almost like the more we domesticate these horses, the more sometimes breeders change what they want in a horse. You can change, as you know, in dog shows, there's different things you can change by breeding certain things out in dogs and cats and adding other things to change what a breed's going to look like. And I have found that a lot of horses now are actually have more thin walls and can't hold a shoe on because their hoof isn't as strong as it used to be. So it just depends on the breeding. Again, that's what bloodlines come into, is knowing bloodlines and what bloodlines produce good hooves. And you can add supplements again to help that horse's body produce more of a stronger hoof by what you feed. And there's biotin, amino acids, different things like that you can feed in supplements to enhance hoof growth. And I've been able to change actually a couple of the strength of my horse's hoof because I have fed that. So that works beautifully because their body will use the extra boost that I'm going to give it. But then sometimes you have to battle genetics. And that's why you need to know those bloodlines, and you've got to work with a good farrier. You can't really change genetics with a supplement.
Oh, well, this is a really good point.
Yeah.
So when you have a horse, go to your vet immediately, right? Like if you bring home a horse, what do you do? It's so weird because someone will bring home a cat and they'll just bring cat food and cat kibble and hope the cat eats it, and they look at him going, hell no. I want the other food that I don't know what it is, but this cat kibble is not working for me.
So I've got an answer for you on this. I've got a great answer for you on this. If you buy it, you're buying a dog from a breeder. Usually when you pick up that puppy has seen a veterinarian and it has a health certificate. You know that puppy's healthy. It has seen a vet. Everything's in line, in order. It's had shots, yada, yada, that kind of thing. With a horse, it's a little different. Really and truly, if you find a horse that's working out beautifully for you, has the training, has the conformation, has the disposition, has everything that you want to go do whatever you want to do with that horse, the best thing to do is truly to have a pre-purchase exam, which means you're going to have a veterinarian, a different veterinarian other than the veterinarian that the seller is using. You want to get a fresh perspective on this horse and do a pre-purchase exam and the vets will listen.
You're getting political now.
No, I don't want to get political.
I'm just joking. Just joking.
I want to be polite about this, but there are obviously people out there that want to sell you something that aren't really completely truthful about it. That's the best way that I'm saying it.
Yeah.
So you have a veterinarian look at this horse for its heart and lungs, its eyes, look at its feet. They can do a hoof tester and check for soundness and all of this in a pre-purchase exam. And it really is worth this. It's worth whatever it costs. It could be $200 up to $500 or $800, depending on if you're going to get x-rays. And honestly, pre-purchase exams have saved us from buying a problem horse that you can't see maybe to the naked eye by having this pre-purchase exam. But then it also has solidified that, wow, we're really getting a good boned horse. There's no problems here. We've got a great starting place. So the pre-purchase exam is very, very important. And
I think it's important too, because horses are not, when you get into the world of horses, it ain't cheap. And you better have a budget for it. And if you get soaked in on a horse that you're going to be in the vet office or they're going to come out to you pretty much, you're in trouble, right? So you better be able to afford it. Is that not, that's what I remember is like, well, yeah, you better be able to afford this stuff, right?
Lisa, we're way beyond the days where people could pick up a horse for $200 or $300. It's gone. That was back in the 70s or 80s. It's changed. And again, depending on what you're going to do with this horse, if you have showing in mind, even trail riding, if the horse is perfect for you and it's the first time and everything falls into place, you need to spend a little more money let's put it this way, you get what you pay for. So yes, you may spend more money, but this horse has got the training to back that price up, and you've got a fabulous horse. And I use these words, it's going to be a turnkey horse, which means you're going to put your feet in the stirrup, throw your leg over the back into that saddle, and you're going to go out and have a wonderful ride on the trail or a wonderful experience in the show arena, and it's worth it.
And okay, so this is different than someone rescuing a horse, right? That we talked about with the wild horses at the beginning. Yes. This is a night and day different thing. So the other thing is, you talked about the hoof. Is the hoof a big part of when we look at a horse's diet being good? Like, does the hoof tell us that they're healthy?
Yes. The hoof tells you a lot of different things. The hoof is going to tell you there's been a change in the weather. There's been a change in feed. There's been a change in the type of ground that I've been ridden over. The horse's hoof, as it grows out from the coronet band, actually can grow with little ridges in it. And those little ridges, it's kind of like the best thing to look is that when you cut a tree, a limb on a tree, you're going to see the rings that tell you how old that tree is. Those rings on the tree are also going to tell you when it's been a drought year or there's been more water. There's so many things that you can read from that ring on that tree. Your horse's hoof is the same thing. Horses' hoofs are going to change the way they look because of drought, and they're going to change because of so much moisture. It's really
so we need to learn how to read that for diet. I mean, you talked about, hay and everything, but there's grains too, right? So grains are a little different than hay.
Some grains, yes, grains are probably fed more because of what we do with our horses. And that gives them a little more energy. If these horses are working hard, they're working in a feedlot and they're running down cattle, all day long and climbing hills and gathering. And, we just give our horse just a little extra to help keep their weight up, because some certain grains can help provide the extra nutrients for weight. Again, for coat, you don't feed the volume of grain like you would the volume of hay. It's different. You really need to feed your horse enough hay that they really get satisfied.
It's like that. Like the hay is like the salad, and then the grains are like the chicken for your meal.
That's reversed. I think I look at it as the hay is the steak, and the grain is that's the way I look at it.
Okay. No,
because
that's great.
I'm going to get more out of my steak than I am out of my salad, really. But it depends on how you look at it. But anyway,
none of us really want to eat salad, right?
And then you add what you might need to help this horse. There's so many different things. So let me give you a little example about when I go on my Chief Joseph trail ride. My horse named Buckley. He gets a great supplement right now, and I will give it a plug for Platinum Performance. That's what I feed, because it has all the trace minerals, the micro minerals in it. It's got the vitamins, amino acids. It's got everything this horse needs in his body to perform for me. If I didn't feed that, if I just gave him hay, this horse could not do that ride. He's going to get completely depleted of any reserves his body might have in one day, because it's such a hard ride. But I still feed on top of that. I'm feeding some magnesium. I'm feeding extra calcium. I'm feeding even red cell, which builds up his white and red blood count. because I'm asking this horse to do a lot. Now, on the other turn, you're going to say, oh my gosh, look at all this you're feeding this horse. But there's a purpose. He's got to carry me for 100 miles in unbelievable terrain and work hard. But when I come home, I slowly decrease him off of that. By the way, when I start him on that, it's a slow increase as well. He's not going to get the same feed on the slower months in the fall or even the winter when he's not being used that much. And that's a mistake people made. They don't pay attention, and they wonder why the horse is so fat in December and now has a hoof problem because it's overweight and they're feeding the wrong things. And I mean, it's just, you've got to pay attention. You've got to observe what your horse needs.
Yeah, this is really interesting about how it is. I mean, be aware, understand. I mean, horses cost money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you're talking about all these different things of what can happen with the diet. I feel like you should have someone understand your horse because individuals, even as humans, right? We
Mm-hmm.
need to know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Like my body is different than Nancy's.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, she just wants pizza and wine. Mine says, I want salad, but I still want wine. You know, Nancy's laughing in the corner over here, but you know what I mean? I'm just kidding
Mm-hmm.
around, but
Yeah.
every animal's different. When we had the horses in South Africa, it was everybody had something different
Mm-hmm.
according to what they
They
needed,
need
what
it.
they were doing,
Right. Right.
what their ability was. Like one
Mm-hmm.
horse is retired, did not need as much money, or not money, food is money really for them, food as the other horses. Like
Mm-hmm.
the other horses, they did cost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So going to the money thing, that's what I was talking about. It's
Cool.
like, holy cow, these horses were being ridden every day going through, forests and stuff like that. And they
Mm-hmm.
were being,
Mm-hmm.
no, that was different. Then we had one horse who was allergic to hay, everything, the soil and all of that. That was weird. But, we took care of a lot of horses that were retired race horses
Mm-hmm.
and they had a lot of issues.
Yes,
They
they
had
will. Yeah. Yes.
I don't know how to explain it all, but
Well,
we did what we could do.
let's talk about older horses for just a moment. There's going to be probably two extremes. You're going to have an older horse um, that's going to be thin, or you're going to have an older horse that's going to be fat. If you're lucky enough, like I've had several older horses into their 30s, and matter of fact, Dollar right now, the horse that I completed the Chief Joseph Trail ride and is in the book Hoofprints Across Time, is a fabulous horse. She ended the ride when she was 20. She's now 28. She looks like she's 15. She's in amazing shape.
Wow.
But so the older horses that are thinner, you may need to feed a little more to help them keep the weight on. That's important. All right. They need that cushion of definitely weight and body fat in the wintertime. You may have the other extreme where you have an older horse now. For whatever reason, these horses can't be ridden. They can't be exercised. It's overweight. Definitely, you need to back them off and get them into a normal weight. Don't let them stay
Mm.
fat. They're going to have back problems. They're going to have hoof problems. So there's different
So
things you have to look at.
hoof is a good way of looking at your
It's a good
horse.
indicator. It's a good indicator. Yes.
That was my point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Looking at
Yeah.
the hoof,
Mm-hmm.
the coat to me is everything about any animal. Is
Yes.
if the
Yeah.
coat. I mean, I know you can brush it and make it glossy, right, and pretty,
Well, only
but
so much. Only so much. Now
only so much.
yeah.
Right? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But if that animals, I don't care if it's a dog, I don't care what animal we're talking about. If
Mm-hmm.
that coat,
Is dull.
I mean, in the wilds of Africa, I can tell a healthy animal in
Mm-hmm.
the bush,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And they're scratched up, scroungy, dirty, everything,
Mm-hmm.
skinny even, but
Mm-hmm.
you can tell when they're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
This is a healthy animal. Not a zoo. No, animals are not healthy in a zoo. Sorry. They're not. They're not. They're not in their environment and they're overweight. They're full of antibiotics. They're not healthy. An animal in the wild is more healthier. It's like, it's amazing to see. They have this wild, like, they're alive look,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Right.
Animal in the zoo, fat, puffy. It's kind of like when we look at humans and we're in the office in a cubicle all day versus out doing what you do, Christy, being out in the, working horses.
Mm-hmm.
Us in the office cubicle get puffy and fat if we don't get with it, right?
That's
And that's
right.
the same thing with the zoo versus the horse that's being,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of us in cubicles and everything are getting better at our health and everything, and companies are doing better. So I'm not knocking you, so don't
Yeah.
email me bad stuff. But this is the truth. Your horse cannot eat like, oh, how many carrots can we give? How many apples? I wanted to bring that up.
Well,
Can
it's
we make a horse overweight?
not overweight, but you can make them sick. So let's say you've got an apple orchard and you live near a place that's making cider and they have all this extra pulp and you say, oh, my horses love that. Let's just throw it out and put it out there in the pasture and horses gorge themselves. They're going to colic on that. They can colic on
Oh, they're going to
overabundance.
colic.
They can
Oh,
over an overabundance of the apple, basically the applesauce or the apple pulp. So common sense. You're not going to sit there and feed
oh,
10
common
pounds of
sense.
carrots to one horse in one day over and over again.
Yeah.
They're lucky. It's great to give them several treats with carrots and apples, but just don't gorge anything. Anything you gorge yourself on, I don't care how good it is, even steak that I love so much. If I gorge myself on that, I'm going to get sick. Because everything has to be in moderation and in balance. My goodness, people, it's going to stay in balance. Let's take care of our horses and
Oh, wow. I just thought about that with people giving apples and carrots. And, I talked to you about this before about, we travel the country, right? And so you see horses, on the side of the road on ranchos all the time, and they're interested, they're intrigued. And I just kind of leave it alone. I love horses. I want to go say hi, but these are somebody else's horses. I don't go and pet them. I don't do anything. I don't feed them. I don't do anything. But other people will go up, just like people that play selfies in national parks with bison that they
yeah,
shouldn't,
yeah,
right?
grizzly bears, yeah,
So I just want to bring this up. Don't go to somebody's ranch and start feeding them apples because you have an apple in the car, right?
right.
Am I right about this?
That's right. But you're right for a lot of reasons. It's not the apple itself, and it may not be the volume of 2 or 3 apples itself. You don't know that horse. You don't know his habits. You don't know if there's 2 horses in that field. One horse gets the apple. The other one's going to charge the other horse because he's jealous and he wants the apple. And your hand's
Dang.
in the way. You're going to get bit. You don't know
Oh,
the
well, that,
attitude. You don't know the attitude. You don't know. Sometimes people don't know how to feed horses and they stick their fingers up in the mouth because they've got it wrapped around the apple and their fingers are now in the horse's mouth instead of just the apple. They get their fingers bit. So you shouldn't
you shouldn't be
shouldn't
messing
pet.
with anybody's horses
That's right.
ever.
That's right.
Quite frankly, without the owner's
Without
permission.
permission. That's right.
Yeah, you go up there, drive up there and ask them, say, hey, I'm into horses. I don't know anything about them. And probably you'll have a really good conversation, or they'll say, get the hell off my land.
Yeah.
And then you know where to go.
Yeah.
But I think that, we're in this weird time thing of our country. And I think just having that conversation can help things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We can bond on certain things of we love horses, but
you can love your horses, but let's also be polite and respect each other's property and realize that this is a living, breathing animal that can act like an animal. It may be a beautiful horse with its head over the fence, but you don't know its attitude.
You don't know anything.
You don't know anything about it. Your perfume gets sent that horse out who knows what.
Horses have diabetes now because of what we've been feeding. Horses, dogs, I mean.
Well, dogs, yes. I don't know about you.
This diabetes things, but I mean, Christy, if you saw me feeding your horses over a fence, would you come out with a shotgun? Maybe.
Well,
you'd probably come out and say, "Now, girl, what are you doing?"
You're not going to know I have I'm packing within my back pocket, but I'm going to come out and talk to you.
She's going to give me a comment. She's going to be saying, like, girl, what are you doing with my horses?
No.
But that's my point. That's my point. It's like, respect the horses.
Yeah. And respect people's private property and personal property and be kind.
Yeah.
I don't mind talking to people that are walking up and down past my ranch on the road and they want to stop and maybe take a picture of the horse, or they put their hand up to try to pet her. I'm going to observe that because I know which horse is out there right now who can handle that. But if there was a different one out there, I would walk out to them and say, you probably shouldn't pet this horse. He's going to grab your shirt. He's going to grab your ball cap, and he may grab your fingers. I'll make a light of it a little bit, but personally, I don't have that horse out in front anyway because I know what he's got, because I know he's going to do that. So if I have to put a horse out in the front arena and where people are going to see him walking by, make sure I have my really, really sweet horse.
We see so much traveling the country. That's why I bring it up. And I see people go, oh, there's horses. Let me go do this. Literally, like we're in a national park.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at this and go, oh, you can't be serious. Like, what are you doing? And Nancy and I, and of course, when we see horses, we want to say hi to them, but we don't.
Mm-hmm.
We do not say hi to them on the road because they're off doing their land. And I feel like that's their property. That is their land, and you let them be, especially on ranches. Especially in Texas, we do a lot of travel in Texas, and man, you see horses, and then we're in places like sometimes we don't even know if they're wild or not, and you don't mess with them unless there's an emergency or something, right?
Right.
And we see horses everywhere, but you do not mess with them. To me, they're not a tourist attraction when you drive through a place.
Right.
They're beautiful. Yes. Jaw drop, say they're take but
it's okay. Pull off the side of the road, put your window down, take a picture and take in the view, or even the wonderful aroma, or the scenery, or whatever. But you don't need to go up and pet that horse. You don't know what his attitude's going to be.
I love horse pee smells. Like I'm at home. When I smell horse pee, I'm like, I'm at home. Sorry. That's the way to close the show. Horse pee, everybody. And don't forget to clean out your stable. All right. Well, thank you so much, Christy. It's another great podcast episode talking about diet of horses. So everyone, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com, everything. And also keep up with Christy. Tell everybody your website. Wooden Horse.
WDNHorse.com.
Because she's the wooden horse. She's Christy Wood. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, all.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's ABCs of Horses featuring Christy Wood. You can keep up with Christy and learn more about her services and her books by going to her website, WDNHorse.com. Keep up with Big Blend Radio at bigblendradio.com.